Why did some members of the American Mafia love marrying their first cousins? Let's check it out. I'm James Gladwish and welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today we are going to take a quick look at why some mobsters married their first cousins, especially within the Gambino crime family. In the 1960s, word came out that members of the Genovese crime family felt that the Gambino crime family was full of sexual degenerates. As one publication would state, but in 1960, when Vito went to prison, Cold War quickly set in between the power-hungry Gambino and Genovese men. The Genoveses stooped to calling the Gambinos the degenerates, a sneaking allusion to intermarried practices within the Gambino family. This quote about the Gambinos being degenerates is usually attributed to Genovese crime family mobster Thomas "Tommy" Ryan Eboli, who, in the 1960s, served as the crime family's acting underboss, and was recorded calling the Gambinos sexual degenerates. The reason for the sexual degenerates quote is often believed to have been because of how members of the Gambino crime family married their first cousins. In 1969, an FBI file has an informant also referring to the Gambinos as degenerates. The file states, SF redacted PC stated that the most feared family in New York is Tommy Ryan's, because almost 100% of the members had to commit murders to get admitted. He added, the next most feared family is Gribbs's. He said that the Gambino family is perhaps the least feared and remarked that it is full of degenerates. So, is there any truth to the rumours that the Gambino crime family was full of sexual degenerates, because some of its members had married their first cousins? As is famously known, family boss Carlo Gambino married his first cousin Catherine. Catherine was also the sister of Paul Castellano. Paul and Catherine Castellano were the children of Giuseppe or Joe Castellano. Carlo Gambino's father, Tommaso, had married Giuseppe Castellano's sister, Felicia. What is rarely discussed is that Carlo Gambino's brother, Paolo, also married a first cousin. Paolo, or Paul Gambino, was a captain in his brother's crime family. He married Caterina Castellano. Caterina Castellano was the daughter of Francesco Castellano. Francesco Frank Castellano was the brother of both Felicia and Giuseppe Castellano. The Gambino brothers Paolo and Carlo weren't the only high-profile mobsters from that crime family to marry their first cousin. Frank Scalise, who had been the family's boss for a short period in around 1930 to 1931, and would then later serve as Albert Anastasia's underboss in the 1950s, also married his first cousin Mary. One FBI file would state, Frank Scalise's three brothers, Salvatore, Giacomo, Jack, and Giovanni, John, have also been identified as members of Cosa Nostra in the same family. It is noted further that Frank Scalise married his own first cousin, Mary Scalise, and, resulting from this incestuous marriage, were a deaf-mute and a mentally retarded child. In the early part of the 20th century, marrying a cousin was a cultural practice prominent in southern parts of Italy, especially Sicily, where the likes of the Gambinos, the Castellanos and the Scalises heralded from. And in fact, a study showed that between 1930 and 1964, there were many marriages between cousins in Sicily. The study states, Cousin marriage is when the spouses are cousins. The tradition was typical in earlier times and remains shared in some cultures today. However, such marriages are forbidden in some jurisdictions: China, Taiwan, the Philippines, North and South Korea, and 24 of the 50 US states. Global, more than 10% of weddings are between first or second cousins. It is believed that kids of first cousin marriages have a risen risk of autosomal recessive genetic diseases. The map below shows first cousin marriages in Italy by percentage, 1930 to 1964. In southern Italy, cousin marriage was a usual tradition in regions such as Calabria and Sicily, where first cousin marriage in the previous century was near to 50% of all marriages. Another study that focused on mafia marriages in the area of Corleone in Sicily at the start of the 1900s and late 1800s looked at marriages where mobsters married a relative up to their third cousin. The study looked at 105 mafiosi from Corleone and included the famous Giuseppe Morello. Out of the 105 mafiosi, the study looked at 35 marriages. The group of mafia marriages was compared to a control group that was randomly selected. The study uses the phrase marital consanguinity. The definition of this is: beyond the legal definitions, consanguineous marriages are broadly understood to indicate unions where partners are related as siblings, parent and child, grandparent and grandchild, aunt and uncle with niece and nephew, or between various types of cousin. The findings from the study on mafia marriages from Corleone, Sicily are as follows. On average, mafia members and their wives in this study are twice as closely related as the control group. The differences in marital consanguinity between the two groups are pronounced. Compared to the control group, mafia couples are twice as likely to have a close degree of kinship, third cousins or closer, which is to say, having in common at least one set of third great-grandparents or a nearer direct ancestor. The threat to law enforcement lies in continuing to abet systems of abusive and unregulated power among organized crime families. The Catholic Church, which has stated that membership in the mafia is not consistent with Catholic ideology, might consider revising their dispensation process in cases of mafia association, as they have with prospective godparents. The celebration of sacraments is one place where the Church still retains real as well as imaginative power over the mafia in Italy. By withholding dispensation for consanguineous marriages between mafia families, the Church might delegitimize and thus destabilize family dynasties that have terrorized Italy for more than 100 years. So, as you can see, although the two studies have different results, there is a trait that cousin marriages were a regular occurrence with mobsters from Sicily. And therefore, it is this fact that made members of the Genovese crime family in the 1960s, such as Tommy Ryan Eboli, who was of Neapolitan heritage, believe that the Gambinos, especially those who were Sicilian, were sexual degenerates. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts on the topic covered in this video. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.